Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have an interesting pen to look at. I try to keep up to date on the new pens coming out of China. It's certainly a full-time job, if not more. So I also like reading Scrivener. There's a gentleman EDC there that writes about pens, and he wrote about this pen. I'd seen it on eBay, but that encouraged me to add it to my collection, to buy it. So here's the auction, and the pen is in this just generic plastic case, a very retail type of packaging. Yeah, that's what's nice about it. Little bit of encouragement there. You know, this was taped shut, but I cut the tape just so I could get the pen out. Slides out. Bobby did include a converter with this pen, so that was taped to the outside. It doesn't usually come with that. It comes with one cartridge external and one within the barrel. The pen's secure in this tray. And right away you may say, I recognize that material, and you'd be right. It's macrolon, otherwise known as the Lamy 2000 material. And I have a 2000. We're going to compare those a little bit later. But this certainly is not 2000 pricing. It's also not piston fill. That is one interesting clip design. The challenge is, from my perspective, not too practical. It is spring-loaded. It's pretty stiff. So getting something underneath there is not going to be easy. And unlike a lot of clips that just have a little point of contact here, the contact is over a long area. So obviously once you got this into your pocket, your shirt, wherever you're putting it, it's going to stay there. It's a pull-off cap, which is what you would expect, and now you see another interesting aspect. Very similar, and there's those little fingers or little knobs that are spring-loaded that keep the cap in place. The section's the same material as the rest of the pen, unlike its more common macrolon associate or family pen. It posts very deeply, very securely. It's a light pen. We'll give you those weights. It feels fine in the hand. That section, if you like the Lamy 2000 section, this one you will probably like just as much. As we mentioned, it's a cartridge converter. It only comes with 2 cartridges, but Bobby included a converter. It's a nice screw piston converter. Could you eyedropper this pen? Probably. There's nothing there to stop you. Those threads are pretty coarse, so you're going to have to definitely use silicone grease, and might try to find an O-ring that would fit that if I was going to do that, but I don't plan to do that. I had another Kaco pen, this one here, which I reviewed, and I really enjoyed the nib on this. And this material is not quite the same feel, but very, very similar feel. And I thought at the time that this could have been macrolon just with the color in it, but now there's no question about the material. So let's get this pen inked up, and we'll do some comparisons and then put nib to paper. Well, here we are with 2 pens you would say are very related, maybe brothers, certainly closer than cousins. You know, both of them have just interesting stylistic treatments, kind of minimalistic, no cap band. You know, there's actually a little bit more detail on the Lamy 2000. You know, pull off caps. They both post well, but when you get to the business end is where you're going to find some differences. You have your ink window here because this is a piston fill, and you have a metal section here which is textured similar to the way the pen is textured. So You don't really mind that metal. And you have a semi-hooded nib versus an exposed like number 5 nib, but that's a very nice Schmidt nib. It's an extra fine. So you may have asked why I didn't do a review on my Lamy 2000. Well, primarily because there's a ton of reviews out there, and I don't really think there's much I can add to those reviews. So I tend to try to present to you, my viewers, a little bit different things that other people are not presenting. So that's why we have the Kaco Edge for your viewing enjoyment today. Thought it might be interesting to give you a close-up view of these sections. You can also kind of, from the light, catch how they're textured. There's actually a little bit of a different texture on this section than it is on the body or the cap. These are both pretty fine nibs. Classic nib and feed, number 5 on that Kaco, and of course your Lamy has its semi-hooded nib. This is designed very well in the cap here. You can see there's a cap liner, and there's also those little fingers to clutch to the section so it stays in place, and that liner is going to keep the nib from drying out, and also keep the mechanism that spring loads the clip away from any ink, so that'll stay airtight up there. Both of the finial at the top of the cap and the end of the barrel are shiny. This appears to be maybe an insert there, or it could be the way the mold in the injection mold is designed. So the mold has a texture which then the plastic picks up when it's molded. And these ends here are nice and polished, so therefore you end up with a glossy black. The Kaco Sky is definitely not a small pen. It's almost equal in length to the Lamy All-Star, and certainly longer and larger diameter than the Pilot Metropolitan. Posted as expected, the Lamy All-Star dominates. I mean, that doesn't post very deeply on the barrel. The Kaco Sky posts very nice, very secure, as does the Pilot Metropolitan. And now they're almost the same length, whereas capped, the Sky, the edge was closer to the All-Star, but now they're fairly close, and that's a good length in your hand, nice balance. So I think one thing that could be used as a comparison is another Lamy pen, the Lamy Ion. I don't own one, so here's a picture of one, comparing it to the Kaco Edge. And I think there's almost more similarities between those two pens from an aesthetic viewpoint, from a visual viewpoint. Material's completely different, but you know, the way the pen looks, that black finish, kind of black matte finish. The Ion comes in a different finish, more in silver. The Ion comes in, I think, 1 or 2 nib choices. So, but I've written with the Ion, and I would say that the Kaco Edge is equal to the nib in the Ion. And this being a number 5, you can swap things out for other number 5 nibs. What ink to put in the pen? Well, this one was a no-brainer. This called to me and said, put me into the Edge. So I did. And I think it works very, very well. It was easy to fill with the converter. I did my, my 3 fills just to make certain that the ink flushed as much as possible and saturated to feed. And it wrote first time, every time. So people have asked me about how to do chromatography. So I buy these coffee filters. Yeah, I upscaled to a brand name. They could have bought generic ones. I've had some friends recommend filter paper that they use in test tubes and in scientific things, which would be more consistent than this, but this works fine. I just cut this up into strips, label the strips, put ink on them, and dip them in water, and we'll look at that. So here's the tools for the chromatography. we have a pen with ink we want to do chromatography on. We have a labeled piece of filter paper. So using the nib, we place a line of ink at the bottom, and I generally try to go pretty slow. And sometimes I'll go back just to make certain I get a nice amount of ink on the filter paper. Then in the beaker, I put the paper in until it just touches the water. Count to 10. And then I lift it up and we watch the ink be pushed up by the water. From start to finish, this generally takes, I would say, 2 or 3 minutes. Not really exciting watching this happen, kind of like ink drying. So we'll see how much we can speed it up. So here's the finished chromatography. This one here is the one you watched me dip. This one over here I dipped probably 6 months ago. Pretty consistent, I would say. And is the ink water resistant? Well, here's chromatography after the ink is dried. So I'd say it's pretty water resistant, which is what I like about it. And a lot of Noodler's inks are eternal, bulletproof, and very water resistant. Yes, I took the pen apart because I saw a review in which they said the section was made out of aluminum. It's hard to tell because the Macrolon resin has a nice density to it. It doesn't feel like a normal plastic like you would feel in this 991. So why is the 991 there? Well, I found out that the nib unit unscrews, and I said that looks familiar. And the 991, and here's the hooded 991, which is also the 992 nib, screws into this assembly. But the converter doesn't fit as nice. As you can see from the back end, this one has that little knob that fits into the converter. That's why you need to remove the converter when you unscrew the nib assembly. But this one has a recess there, so this doesn't fit in there because the outside diameter here doesn't fit inside of that collar. And that collar is where the thread is. So interesting that there is some commonality there, but not enough to really exchange parts without doing some modifications, which to me I'm not willing to do because I'm really happy with the way the nib works on the Kaco edge. Some people pronounce it Kaco versus Kaco. And the other thing I did was I pulled the black nib out of the other Kaco that I have, and that should fit in there. Again, I really so much I'm going to take apart, but this nib will pull out, same feed. So in theory, you could get a black nib for your edge from this other Kaco, which the name escapes me. I'll put it on the thing. I also did a video on it. So interesting when you take these pens apart, how parts seem to almost fit together or almost be the same, but they're not quite. So again, pens are unique. So how does this pen write? Well, I've been writing with it for a few days now, and I would say it writes great. You know, the pull-off cap is nice. It's secure. It doesn't rattle. You know, you get that last little push on that you know it's nice and sealed and it's not coming off. But yet it doesn't take a lot of pressure to get it off. And posting is a similar type of feel. And as you can see, it works well in the hand, both posted and unposted. So let's see how this nib lays down some ink. So this is very smooth. It lays down a decent amount of ink. It's easy to do a nice dense patch. You know, it's not the wettest nib, but it's wet enough. And this ink dries pretty quick on this paper. So how would I rate this pen? Now, I think you know I like it. I'm going to give it a 9.4. Feels good in the hand. The nib works well. I mean, for an extra fine, which I'm not a fan of, I like it. I could use this pen as an everyday carry, day-to-day use. So I enjoy it. It fits well in the hand. As you can see, no skips. And fast writing is fine. So what's there not to like? And the price is excellent for this quality of pen. It doesn't come with a converter, but you know, Bobby fixes that when you buy from him. So we've reached the end of this video. So thank you very much for tuning in, taking these journeys with me as I explore these interesting pens that are easy to acquire and really do write well. So may you enjoy all your experiences of putting ink on paper. You know, it's great to record your thoughts, share them with others, and just to enjoy the quality, manufacturing, and excellent utility of these writing instruments. So we've reached the end of this video. Until the next one, bye for now. Very good writer.